Hey everybody, welcome to the Hunter's Eyes podcast, sports as seen through Marcus Hunter's eyes. And today we have a big basketball game to talk about, a game that just ended not too long ago. Mississippi State taking on Kentucky right here in Starkville at the Hump. Mississippi State, an NCAA bubble team, but most pundits think the Bulldogs will be in. Kentucky, a definite surefire to get into the NCAA tournament. They are ranked in the top 25, and they brought a pretty good team to Starkville with some NBA talent on it. And let me just say, it was a very good game for all the fans in attendance tonight. It was a sellout in Starkville, Mississippi at the Hump. It was also a whiteout for the big game. And let's just say the fans got a treat. However, they did not get a win. The Kentucky Wildcats managed to snatch victory away from the Bulldogs with the final score of 91-89. Now, that game was filled with a lot of twists and a lot of turns and also some standout performances that kept fans on the edge of their seats until the very last second of the game. And when I say the very last second, I do mean the very last second, because Kentucky won the game with a shot with under a second to go in the game. We're going to get to that shot and how it all played out and how we even got to that point, because it seemed like Kentucky was going to walk away with this victory after it seemed like Mississippi State was going to walk away with this victory. Stay with me. Despite facing adversity, the Wildcats never lost their composure, and neither did Reed Sheppard. Never lost his composure as well, because he was killing the Dogs all night. Sheppard finished the game with 32 points. Sheppard again delivered with that decisive blow, sinking the game-winning shot with only 0.5 seconds left to go on the clock. And this shot came right after a Josh Hubbard three-pointer by Mississippi State to tie the game up. The Bulldogs had no timeouts, couldn't call a timeout, and Kentucky went right down the court, and Sheppard made that shot.
So he's got it.
He did.
And he will shoot it.
And he did.
And he buried it to tie it. 7-3 of the night. Chance for Kentucky. Sheppard got it!
Okay, so who were the stars in this basketball game? Well, for Mississippi State, Tulu Smith, of course, he came to play. Tulu finished the game with 21 points, but it was the freshman Josh Hubbard that finished with a game-high 34 points for the Bulldogs, but unfortunately, it was not enough. And not only did he have 34 points, he was 7 of 14 from beyond the arc, and several of those three-pointers came late in the game. That, again, helped Mississippi State climb back in this thing and make it a game late. Otherwise, Kentucky would have ran away with it in the second half after they nearly pulled out to a double-digit lead. But let's talk about how we got there. Okay, so what happened in this game? So at halftime, Mississippi State had a 10-point lead. They were up 56-46 on Kentucky, and the Bulldogs were in command for most of the game. They were dominant on the offensive side of the board. They were dominant on the offensive side of the ball, scoring at will in that first half, it seemed. And then they came out in the second half, and they continued to be hot, scoring at will again. But then Kentucky, they did what they do best. I mean, they went on a run. They buckled down, and Coach Cal got his guys to settle in and start running plays. At times in the game, Kentucky went to a zone defense that seemed to confuse Mississippi State at times, just enough confusion for Kentucky to get back into the game. And when they got back in the game and the game got close, Mississippi State, their players started to tighten up. The fans started to tighten up. You could hear it inside of the Hump. You could hear the beginning of the game. It was crazy in there. And then halfway through the second half, it wasn't crazy in there anymore, because Kentucky was mounting their comeback. Eventually, Kentucky, like I said, they would go on to take that lead before Hubbard had his heroics down the stretch. Not only Hubbard, but Tulu Smith, Cameron Matthews. Cameron Matthews was big in this game, making big shots when they needed them. They only finished with 7 points, but they were 7 huge buckets for the Bulldogs. DJ Jeffries hit some big shots as well for the Bulldogs. He finished the game with only 6 points, but he was 2 for 2 from three-point range, and those 2 threes were huge, and they came exactly when the Bulldogs needed them. Mississippi State, their biggest lead of the game in this one, was 13 points. That came in the second half. Like I said, in the second half, Mississippi State came out and they did go on the run, and they found themselves up by 13 points. However, Kentucky would go on a run as well, and they would get their biggest lead in the game with 57 seconds to go in the game. Now let that sink in, folks. Kentucky had an 8-point lead with 57 seconds to go, but somehow they needed Sheppard's heroics in order to win this game, because somehow Mississippi State managed to tie it up again with those timely threes. And Kentucky made their free throws, but when you're making threes and you're going against two, well, then you have a chance to come back in the game, and that's what Mississippi State did. Again, this was a great game for the fans. There was only one lead change in the game. Mississippi State led for most of the game, and the only change happened when Kentucky came back and took that lead late in the second half. And there were only two ties, and the fans know one of those ties. It came with just about 7 seconds to go in the game after Hubbard hit that three, and then Sheppard made sure the game was tied no more after that. So all in all, it was a fantastic basketball game. It was fun to watch, fun for the fans. It was an electric crowd at Humphrey Coliseum, a sellout crowd. It was a whiteout and excited. It was just great to be a part of that atmosphere. So great to see that type of atmosphere back inside Humphrey Coliseum. I was talking to some of the students after the game, and it reminded me about 20 years ago, Lawrence Roberts, Mississippi State's basketball team, Lawrence Roberts, Timmy Bowers, all those, Derek Zimmerman, those guys on that basketball team that lost to Kentucky on a final second shot at the end of the game. Pretty much almost the same way, except for that one came off a miss and a tip back. But yeah, Mississippi State, Kentucky, some epic battles, and unfortunately, Kentucky is on the winning side of those basketball battles more often than not. But hey, a lot of big games coming up as we get to the end of the SEC basketball season for most teams. Only 3 games to go before we get into SEC play, and can't wait for that. And can't wait for the NCAA tournament. We're going to have much more when the tournament teams are seeded, and we're going to be talking about tournament basketball. Can't wait. One of my favorite times of the year. Now that football is over, we're going into March Madness, then we go into the NBA Finals, and then we're going to get into baseball and World Series, and football season comes back. So, it is the slower time of year for sports, but hey, I'm excited because Mississippi State basketball is back on the map, and hopefully they will be able to make some noise in the NCAA tournament this year. I think this is the team that can make a deep run because they have veterans, they have big, strong post players, and they have guys who can hit from outside. That's the recipe you need to make it to a Final Four. And I honestly think that this Bulldog team, with the right matchups in the brackets, has what it takes to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. Well, that's it for the Hunter's Eyes podcast for today. Sports seen through Marcus Hunter's eyes. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, holla back.